I'm Suzanne, and I am a writer, an author, and a teacher.
And I'm Mychal, and I am a sommelier, I'm a tarot reader, mind blank, and a former ballet dancer.
And this is D for Dreams at All the Woo A to Z.
Yay! I'm excited about this one. But before we get started, would just like to say this is a safe space. If you are super deep into the woo-woo, or even if you're just woo curious, just know that we want this to be a judgment-free zone where we are really just sharing information with you from what we know, our own experiences, how we have run across this in our own lives, utilized it, and all of that.
And especially when we're talking about dreams, because that is a very intimate space. You know, you can't necessarily be responsible for what your subconscious is coming up with. So
this is true.
Feel free to follow along. So what is today's wine to go with dreams?
So you'll have to forgive me. This wine is a little bit on the nose, but this is made by a winery by the name of Jermann, and it's entitled Where Dreams Have No End. It is an Italian white wine. It is a Chardonnay. And the kind of Chardonnay similar to what we've had in the past so far, where if you're more of a Sauvignon Blanc drinker, you'll probably really like it. It's not super oaky at all, but it's also not very fruity. I will say that. It's definitely different in style than the other Chardonnay that we had.
Excellent. So let's just pour a glass and get started. Dreams.
I'm excited. I'm excited about this one.
So we are doing this as more of an interview style because Mychal has experience as a dream interpreter. And while she can tell you where she got her start, I think maybe we first should start with what is a dream?
So dreams are really your subconscious mind speaking to you. And this is why it's important, or if you can remember, or even if you're somebody who's like, I never remember my dreams, why it could be important to start to learn how to remember your dreams is because your conscious mind is, we all know the negative self-talk that we have and all of that. In other words, your conscious mind has the ability to kind of lie to you, right? Your subconscious mind is not going to lie to you. It's going to tell you the truth on how things are seen and point things out to you. So
it's sort of like the friend who you come back from the bathroom and you're like, you still have spinach in your teeth? That's what your subconscious is?
That's what it is, yes. So, and it normally dreams, there are all different kinds of dreams that you can have. I say all kinds, but essentially there is the majority of dreams that everybody has every night are going to fall within the realm of your subconscious mind talking to you about what has happened in your life or what's going on within the past 24 to 48 hours, right? And then you can have other dreams where deceased loved ones or people that you know have come and visited you. Like that's a whole other dream and it'll have a completely different feel to it. And then you can also have prophetic dreams as well. But same thing, all of these dreams have a very different feel to it in comparison to the more common ones that you're going to have majority of nights, which is your subconscious talking to you about what's going on.
And the interesting crossover between dreams and storytelling, which is my background, is that dreams use archetypes and story structure just the way that, Hollywood does.
Yeah.
But before Hollywood, all the mythologies of the world use basically the same forms and format for communicating. And that is what our subconscious does with us. So how does one get started at dream interpretation?
Well,
Besides have a dream.
First of all, I would recommend if you want to get into dream interpretation, interpreting your own dreams is the first place to start, which means that if you don't remember them, then you have to start remembering them, the steps to doing that.
Yeah, I rarely remember my dreams.
Yeah.
So how do I start?
So your mind is going to respond to what it is that you're doing. So the very first thing, having the intention that you want to remember. So before you go to sleep, being like, I want to remember my dream, number one. And before you go to sleep, I would have a piece of paper or journal and pen or pencil next to your bed so that you can write down immediately the moment that you wake up anything that you can remember. And also as a reminder to try to recall anything that you can. Because as soon as you start to recall, like actively recall when you first wake up, your mind is like, oh, great, they're listening. And then we'll start to give you more information versus like, oh, I mean, even as personalities, we are the same way. Like, oh, if you're talking to somebody, if it's just going into a void, you're not going to put that much effort into it versus somebody who's interested in learning, then you're like, okay, great. They're responsive and they're listening to what I'm saying. So your brain responds in the same way. So it takes time. It's not an immediate thing that happens overnight. Dun-dun-dun. Bad joke, sorry. But but the more that you do it and you're showing this active trying to remember, the more you'll start to realize that you are remembering in the morning time.
Okay, so I set my intention, I sleep, I wake up, and I remember blue gorillas and pampas grass. And I write that down.
You write that down.
And my subconscious is like, woohoo, she's listening.
Yep. So then the next night you might remember, instead of blue gorillas, this time you have giraffes in the Sahara, and then they're drinking from a pond. So then you might have actions that you'll start to remember and that kind of thing, where you'll also write down anything that you can recall, like even a feeling of it. Like it felt awkward, I felt comfortable, I was scared, or whatever it may be. Whatever you can recall, feelings, emotions, actions, write it down.
Okay, so once I have all this written down, then I call you?
Sure, you can call me. But I would think that the best way, especially if you want to learn how to interpret, is to start interpreting your own dreams. So there's a way of thinking about this. And the way that it was described to me is that when your mind dreams, the reason why you have dreams, one of the reasons why, is that your brain speaks to you in what's called universal language. So when you're thinking about things, you're not necessarily thinking in words. I don't know if you realize this, but oftentimes you're thinking in images, and that's how your brain communicates with you.
Ironically, my brain communicates with me like the opening scene of Star Wars, where the words
and
are
you're just
written
reading it
across the giant landscape.
I mean, it's more unusual, but typically your mind is
Pictures and archetypes and stories.
And so all of these things have functions to them, and that's basically the realm. So if the way that you're translating these images into a language or a story or a meaning behind it is that everything that's in the dream represents you in some way. So the space in which it is telling you the space in your mind that this dream is having to do with. Like if it's in the kitchen, that is a place where you are preparing knowledge, because food, as you take in, is nutritious for your body. What would be nutritious for your mind? Knowledge, thoughts. So kind of that. So if you're in the kitchen, it's a place of preparation of knowledge. If it's a food thing, it's an intake of knowledge into your mind. Even people that are in your dream. You may have people that you know in real life in your dream versus people that you don't. And that all is same thing, all in relation to parts and aspects of yourself. And I can give you a little brief rundown if you want, or we can just
It sounds like really in a way that you're saying a dream is kind of like a funhouse mirror that you're trying to figure out.
Yes.
Where is my nose? How tall am I in this picture kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so without doing actual dream interpretation at this moment, what aspects of myself am I looking for in this dream interpretation?
What do you mean by what? I'm unclear on the question, sorry.
So let's say I do have kind of a fun house dream and I do see myself in all of these different kind of interpretations. Mm-hmm. Is that just my brain off-gassing fears, or is it I am trying to tell myself something about the way I see myself? What?
Yes. The answer is yes. So what you're doing, all the actions that happen is going to fill in all of those gaps. So if you have any interaction with these other characters in your dream, that's going to tell you what the meaning is, what the purpose is, that part of yourself, what kind of interaction you're having with it. But most of the time it's more kind of explaining what you have been dealing with. So if you interpret it, you should see a pretty immediate correlation with what you've been dealing with.
So I have a dream, Michael.
Okay.
Let's interpret it.
All right. So let's hear this dream, Suzanne.
Okay, so this was a nightmare I had as a kid.
Okay.
So possible background information is I grew up in Spain for a couple of years, and so there's some very heavy Spanish overtones in this dream.
Okay.
So, and it doesn't have a storyline, which is a little bit frustrating for a storyteller.
Yeah.
So it is just a sort of transmutation of a character. And the thing that is unnerving is that, to my way of feeling about it, they look opposite of the way they behave.
Okay.
Okay, so when I was a kid growing up in Spain, they had these massive Michelin Man, which is the guy who's built out of tires, billboards. And so my dream is a massive Michelin Man, a real one, as real as one could be, walking towards me. And he's smiling, but his smile is just super creepy. And then he kind of melts into, which is a considerable amount of melting, into like a Goya figure. So really long and lean and kind of oily looking. So it goes from being tire man,
Okay.
white and kind of jolly looking with a smile, to being this almost skeletal, almost oily looking character. And terrified me.
Couple questions. Was this...
What was I eating?
Well, no.
And it was a pretty consistent dream.
Did it take place in any... Was this happening outside? Was this happening inside?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't think it was inside, but not any specific outside location.
Okay, and outside of that, there was really no interaction with it. It was transforming in front of you.
Yeah, it was just a feeling of dread and horror and like whatever, I guess dread is negative anticipation, and also a sense of being trapped.
Okay. Well,
we're seeing it in real time here, people. Real time.
So maybe I walk you through how I'm thinking about this. I'm trying to look, the reason why I'm asking if it happened outside versus inside, that would tell me whether or not this, like your state of mind that you're in, how it's affecting there, if there's any kind of interaction. So this is not going to be a really long interpretation because it's more kind of...
It's not a really long dream.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's not necessarily a real person either. So this would be... Especially since it was an advertisement, right? Is what you're saying?
Well, I'm thinking that's where I got the image, because when we traveled, we always had the Michelin guides. My dad would drive. My mom would read from the guides. I would sit in the back seat and try not to throw up. And so I was just always surrounded by the Michelin Man.
So it really was the Michelin Man, not a Michelin Man kind of thing.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, he wasn't the actual Michelin Man. This is not a...
You know what I'm saying, though. But like as far as like imagery is concerned.
No, the imagery was the Michelin Man.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at.
But I think that was just heavily influenced, just like the Goya, by the museums I went to. So these were images I had seen. I wasn't getting them out of the ether, but...
Right. So what I'm trying to figure out is my mental process here, and the reason why I'm asking the questions that I'm asking, is kind of working through how much of this is a perceived thing, like real thing, or how much of it is imaginary. And what I mean by imaginary, like, is this something that's completely made up, or is this an actual figure that is something that you would see as an advertisement? So how I would interpret this fear is that there is a real fear and insecurity in false presentations from the outside world. So meaning that one thing is presenting itself as being friendly, but what you're seeing then is something really deep down, a manipulation and for some reason I want to say a deep-seated kind of, sorry, I'm having a hard time finding the words here, a deep-seated kind of...
Falsehood is the word that comes to mind as I'm following what you're saying.
Yeah, falsehood, but like it being misleading is kind of what I'm going for. That where somebody's deception. There we go. Thank you. And that there's a real fear that you have been dealing with at that point in your life, that you were afraid that what somebody was showing you, that somebody was actually coming at you from a negative. Why am I having a hard time thinking of words?
Well, and the other thing was that, and this plays into the deceptive component of it, is that the one who was smiling and seemed like, be fat and jolly
Right.
was the one who was evil, and the one that was sort of slimy. And if y'all haven't seen a Goya picture, very long, lean skeletal kind of figure, that they were the one that was quote unquote good.
Kind of honest as far as portrayal is concerned.
Well, and also didn't have any negative intention.
Right.
And I guess that was the thing in the smile of the Michelin Man. And this is no offense to actual Michelin men or
Yes.
the Michelin brand or anything. It was just a kid. But that interpretation of I am being smiled at and something is terribly, terribly wrong and I'm going to be in danger.
Yeah.
But from what you said and that particular time in my life, that is so spot on. I'm not going to cry on our podcast. I'm not.
I actually don't think that you've ever told me this dream to interpret before, believe it or not. And I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty coming up with the words of what it is, and I'm because I'm getting the feeling of it. But yeah, that what is meant to be presented to you as being good and happy and all that is not real. And for something that may seem like it should be a scary thing was more trustworthy because it was honest.
She's pretty spot on, y'all. So how did you go about
deciphering all
of that?
Because I'm looking at the fact that what you're saying is a Michelin Man is an actual advertisement. That is something that's being presented to you, propaganda, right? And that there was a real fear behind something that is being presented to you in that way. And Goya is art, and it is not, art can be used as propaganda, but that most of the time people consider art, especially in that way, that sometimes can be not considered pretty in the traditional sense, but that there's a real honesty in art. And sometimes people really kind of have that as being part of the definition of what makes art, per se, that both of those, as far as like how we perceive both of these things as being an advertisement versus art, there's those two things. And then your response to either of them, that you were afraid of the advertisement, but that you felt more comfortable with the art, even though it was a less kind of pretty thing. Like that's how I'm interpreting that.
Wow. You're making me sound like a very deep 10-year-old.
You were a very deep 10-year-old.
That's probably true, too. And this was before I learned the chakra system, so I didn't know how to shut off. So how would a person, so if I was on my own trying to interpret this, what would the steps, what would I have needed to go through in order to get anywhere close to that?
I'd have to say that one would probably, if I was first interpreting dreams, be a harder one to interpret, to be honest with you. Because the things that I'm looking at are the things that give it a place, interaction, what symbols there are in the dream. So everything that stands out to you as being either just that you're very aware that it's there's a reason why it's being pointed out to you. And so you have to look at the function of all these different things. So outside versus inside.
And now that I'm thinking about it, it was outside because the Michelin Man was walking over a hill.
Okay.
And we didn't have hills in our house.
Majority of things that are happening outside are having to do with your innate knowledge and understanding of the world, because trees and anything that has like rooted plants, things like that, those are your soul's understandings, like knowledge and understandings that have been learned either through just this lifetime, and if you believe in reincarnation, things that and knowledge that has been gained through past lifetimes, like knowledge that has stayed with you in your soul's knowledge.
So it's significant that it was a plane.
Yes, that is significant. But also at the same time that this is something that you're carrying with you probably for either something that you experienced really, really early in this life, so obviously before you were 10 years old, that you had some kind of experience that created this knowledge and understanding, or that this is something that you're bringing with you from a past lifetime that's a real fear and understanding of how the world kind of works. Then I'm looking at if it was a real person, meaning like not something that's presenting itself as a Michelin Man or as an artwork kind of thing. Like let's say this was your next door neighbor that was a man. I'm going to say that this is really important, how you're kind of the level of what people are to you. So if I'm a female and I dream about another female, then that's my conscious mind that I'm dreaming about, aspects of my conscious mind. If I'm a female and I dream about a male, it's aspects of my subconscious mind. If I am dreaming about anybody who's in authority, so a parent, law enforcement, anything like that, then that's like my higher self that I'm interacting with. So that's why I'll kind of ask. And also, if you know the person in real life, what I would do is ask you to personally assign 3 words of how you were to describe that person to anybody else. And what that means is that those are 3 characteristics about yourself, that's how your mind is trying to talk to you. Like this aspect of yourself that represents these things is interacting in this way.
So those didn't apply to the story because
Correct.
I am neither the Michelin Man nor a Goya.
Correct. However, also it's really important if you have like an actor or somebody famous who shows up in your dreams, then that's more of like an imagined element of self because you don't really know them in real life.
So for all of you who are having Brad Pitt or Harry Styles dreams, it is just an aspect of yourself.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, thank you so much for that mind-blowing understanding. So now that you have heard a dream interpretation, a pretty complicated one, apparently.
Yeah.
If someone wants to get started on doing this just for themselves, what I've heard that people can like just Google, I had a duck in my dream kind of thing, and it will come up. But maybe that's not the best choice, guessing from your expression.
I mean, you're not going to, it's like any learning a language, right? You have to use it to become fluent in it. And it becomes cumbersome if you are not fluent over a period of time doing it. So one of my first things, like I said, log your dreams. Try to first remember them and log them, and then interpret your own dreams. And as you're doing that, where you can get the symbols, I'd probably stick with one method because everybody can, from book to book, I'll notice some little variances on how people interpret certain imagery and symbols. So what you're also kind of doing is teaching your own mind what language you're using.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're agreeing that a duck means
This.
a pay raise. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So I would probably stay with I would get a book that is a dream interpretation book that has just a bunch of symbols and what that means for whatever feels right for you, and use that. And as you start to interpret your own and become more fluent, then the next step is maybe you have friends that are willing to share their dreams because they want dream interpretation, is interpreting other people's dreams. So that's really the best way to really start to become fluent in being kind of put on the spot, honestly, and not needing to look up all of those symbols all the time.
And so for somebody like me who generally is like, I just don't dream.
Yeah.
What advice? Now I've been told, oh, you do. You just don't remember them.
Well, it's first you have to tell your mind that you are interested in remembering. So like I said, the first step is the intention and really making that intention known, and maybe even saying it out loud to yourself before you go to sleep. I want to remember my dream in the morning, and have some way of prompting yourself first thing, because especially in the morning time, if you remember and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go to the restroom really quick before I write down, you really only have a little bit of time to recall a lot of information. And if you don't recall it first thing, it's typically gone, right? So if you start to try to recall it immediately, the more you'll start to be able to recall.
Okay. So what I'm learning is that dreams, in fact, are kind of a muscle, a mental muscle.
Oh, yeah.
Exercise them and they'll get stronger. And join us next time where this is possibly the one we are most excited about.
So excited.
because this is possibly the thing that we love almost more than wine and people.
We're going to have a hard time keeping this at a 25-minute podcast.
We're going to have to script this one.
Yeah.
But it is going to be E for Egypt.
Egypt.
All right. Thanks for joining us on All the Woo A to Z. See you for E.